Hi everyone, Autumn here. Today I wanted to talk about what it feels like to be in a relationship with a narcissist. And I'm going to talk from a first person point of view and then kind of weave in some general terms and ideas of what it feels like. But if you found this video, I'm sure that you were in a relationship or are in a relationship with a narcissist. So you know, and you will know what I'm talking about. Or if you're questioning it, if you identify with some of the things that I say, then that will help you figure out whether or not you are in a relationship with a narcissist and whether or not you should stay or you should go. So being in a relationship with a narcissist is something that only having gone through it allows you to understand it. And what I mean is your friends, your family, people that haven't been through it, people that haven't been through this particular type of very indirect, this very pervasive, constant, overwhelmingly secretive abuse. If you haven't been through it, you cannot understand it. Trying to explain it to someone who has never been through narcissistic abuse is trying to explain to somebody what something tastes like or smells like. You can kind of roughly use adjectives, but you're almost trying to describe something with its own words. Understanding what something tastes like through hearing words describing it is so very hard. You'll never truly understand what something tastes like until you've tasted it. And that's true, I feel like, with narcissistic or any of the abuse that comes from any emotional manipulators, especially and in particular with cluster B personality disordered people. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of abuse, and there's a lot of different type of emotional manipulators. You know, there's a lot of alcoholics and addicts that abuse their partners and the people in their life, like their children or their friends or coworkers. There's a lot of people with bipolar disorder and other mood disorders that abuse the people in their life. But there's just a lot of assholes that abuse the people in their life. But this particular type of abuse that is given out from the cluster B personality disordered people is very specific, and it is impossible to truly understand unless you've been through it. Being in a relationship with a narcissist is like drowning. Every day. It's like drowning, but just getting your head up just enough from under the water so that you don't die. You get your head up just enough times for just long enough to get enough air so that you don't fully die. But you never get your head above water. You never get out of the state of panic that you may die at any moment. And you never know if your head is you never are certain that you're going to get that next breath. That's what being in a relationship with a narcissist is like. Because, first of all, you never know what you're going to get that day. You may get this wonderful, incredible person. Now, depending on what point of the relationship you are. Now, narcissistic relationships tend to typically follow a playbook and a pattern, and it's cyclical. And, it goes idealization, and then, it goes devaluation, and then it might go idealization, devaluation, up and down, and then finally discard, and then it might recycle all over again. But because of that idealization to devaluation, that can go on without you even totally piecing it together as a pathological or dysfunctional thing for many years. There are people that I've spoken to, clients I've worked with, YouTubers that I've seen their videos, and bloggers that were with their narcissists. There's one lady who has a YouTube page that she put up in the last month or two that I've watched all her videos. I find her stories of being married to a narcissist very fascinating. She was with him for 16 years until the real discard kind of true mask came flying off. So that goes to show that there's a lot of ups and downs, and you never know what you're going to get. You may get this lovely, kind, generous, sweet person, depending on what the agenda is, depending on how full their narcissistic supply tank is, or you may get this monster who's just rageful and hateful, who if you're with a narcissist, that especially if they're cerebral, they're probably not physically abusive. And the truth is, most of them aren't, because they are afraid of the police, and they're smart enough to know that they can get in big trouble. And then also because that is the line a lot of them won't cross. Now, not all of them, don't get me wrong. In fits of rage and anger, they'll get violent. And it's only a matter of time with some of them that they'll get violent on their partners, both men and women narcissists. Women narcissists, I feel, and from everything I've worked with professionally, they seem to get more physically violent and aggressive sooner and quicker because they feel like socially they're able to get away with it. But this kind of feeling of the roller coaster ride and never knowing what you're going to get that day, it's like drowning, never knowing when you're going to get your next breath. You have no faith. And oftentimes, you just wish you would die. And I don't mean that literally. Maybe literally sometimes, but I mean in that metaphor of drowning in the relationship. Sometimes you just wish the relationship would just die, that it would cease to exist. Because it's so painful, but you're so attached to it. You're so in love, quote unquote, with this person, with the image that they projected and the bones they throw you and the beginning of the relationship that you're always trying to get back to. So being in a relationship with a narcissist is like always living your life in a fantasy. Because if you don't live your life based on the memory of how things were at the beginning, during the love bombing, idolization phase when you first fell in love with them, or living on the hopes and dreams for the future of how wonderful it's all going to be once they X, Y, and Z, once they work through the childhood abuse, once they, have a stable job, once whatever their excuses are. If you don't live in fantasy, you cannot rationally ever justify keeping that relationship going. Because in the moment, there's so much chaos, so much pain, so much hurt, so little reward, that most of us, no matter how codependent we may be, or may have been, or how blind we may have been when it's calling our name in big neon letters, it's nearly impossible to ignore it. Being in a relationship with a narcissist, it is like having amnesia. I didn't write any of the stuff down. I'm truly giving you picture into my own feelings and hoping that maybe it'll help one person by relating, by knowing that how they feel, someone else feels or has felt, or by helping somebody to see if they do have a relationship with a narcissist so that they can move on and be happy again. Or if they're not, they can heal the relationship. But being in a relationship with a narcissist is like having amnesia every day. It's the only way you can have a relationship with a narcissist. You have to force yourself organically, because if you don't do it organically, if you do it consciously, it won't work. So you have to become a master at rewiring your neural pathways to skip, the prefrontal cortex, or the whole area of your brain that serves short-term memory, because you need to be able to forget so much of what's happened 5 minutes ago, an hour ago, a day ago, a month ago, a year ago. Otherwise, again, you could not stay in love with this person. You could not stay in a relationship with them. You could not hang around for the goodies, which the goodies are what's going to happen once things get quote unquote better. And that amnesia starts to apply to all parts of our life. So we do this because acknowledging what the narcissist does to us, how it makes us feel, is just too painful for us to really look at. It's too painful to think about leaving them, because if we truly acknowledge it, we can't stay with them. So we go into a state of forced amnesia. And then what happens? This is what happens as humans. It starts to be propagated, and it starts to be applied to all areas of our life, even the things that we used to love and enjoy doing. We forget the passion. We do it and we don't even remember doing half of the stuff we do. We become so used to this feeling of forgetting and forgiving. And within forgiving just comes forgetting. Just forgetting it ever happened. Being in a narcissist, being in a relationship with a narcissist, is like losing the entire part of you that you trusted to have sound, rational perspective. It is like losing the very fiber by which you trusted yourself to see the realities of who people are, of what people may be, of what the world is, of how we fit in the world, all of these things. Being in a relationship with a narcissist requires that we live in a make-believe world. It requires that we allow our partner to essentially do whatever they want without consequence. It means that we forego our own self-worth in order to appease them and not start a fight. It means that we keep working harder and harder. I had a running list in my journal of all of the things that I could do that would make him happy, that would make my ex-husband happy, things that he needed, things that he wanted. Because I knew early on, I learned early on in my relationship with him, that if I did things that he needed, wanted, or that made him happy, then that would buy me at least a few hours of his sweetness, his kindness, or his love and attention. If not a whole day or two. It would buy me a whole bunch of text messages, I love you, maybe a love letter, a card. It would definitely buy me dinner after work, hand holding, maybe a little bit kissing. So I've only scratched the surface, truly. Only the tiny bit of the surface. And one day I think I'm going to write another or do another video on what it's like to be married to a narcissist, because there are so many technical things I didn't even touch on that are just so important. But I felt this emotional need to express myself in this way, the way I just did in this video, because being in a relationship with a narcissist is, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Being in love with somebody like this, somebody who truly doesn't have empathy, who truly doesn't care about you, and who truly will lie to you and say whatever to manipulate you and get what they need, is just heartbreaking and devastating. And it starts to erode your entire trust in everyone and in the world around you. In the first month, my ex and I were broken up, when all of this was starting to come out. We've been apart for only a few months now, but I'm finally have healed. I have changed my entire focus of my practice and who I'm working with. I have changed everything. We were only married a year, but in narcissist time, dealing with one, it seems a lot longer. But in the beginning, when he first discarded me, after all the times I tried to leave him because of how he treated me, he just up and left and basically was like, what's the problem? You know, I was in love with him and he just left. He was my best friend. He promised me he wouldn't ever leave me, or he wouldn't leave me in this situation, but he did. In the situation that he had promised me he would get better, go to therapy. I wrote this poem. I'm going to end this video with the beginning of this poem, because I feel like it describes so much and so many levels what it feels like to be in love with a narcissist. Because we're in love with this person who can never be in love with us. They're incapable of it. They're not really human in that way. Their conscience is not there. Their empathy is not there. Emotions are too much for them. They are childish on so many levels. And I think we are still in pain, a lot of us. Even if it's bad pain or it's because of abuse, they still have us hooked in. But again, the love I had for him felt very real for me. And for you, I'm sure it did as well. And it doesn't matter how fake it was or what their agenda was, real or not, it does not matter, because it was real to you. So I'm going to end this video with the beginning of a poem I wrote right after he broke up with me, and I knew in my heart of hearts it was over, but I still hadn't truly figured out what was going on. And the poem goes, being in love with someone who is not in love with me is a cruel, cruel joke from the powers that be. Is a daisy in a bed of roses, is a knife within thou heart. Is my body blue and bruised, and my muscles torn apart.